something a little bit different today because I want to demonstrate an important technique to help children learn anger control management, especially very angry kids. I learned this technique and developed it, I developed it in group home settings with neuropsychiatric children of various disorders, including impulse control and severe anger and aggression, and especially while trying to help them with their homework. I learned that many times when making a mistake, they would hit themselves on the side of the head here. And left-handers would hit their head here, although many times left-handers would still use their right hand and still hit this side of their head here. Of course, I work with children also that had to wear helmets because of head banging and so forth. So we tried to work with them, and I developed the technique after studying some neurophysiology, neuroanatomy of the brain at that time in the 80s. Things weren't as developed as they are now, but the technique still worked. And what I taught children to do is to massage the back of their head when not angry, right here. I think you can see where my hands are, but I'll turn around here. Right here, kind of where the skull curves into the top of the neck. Here's the top of the neck. So right here, I taught them to massage that regularly and frequently when not angry, but especially when angry and frustrated. Now, many of the children, and myself right now included, when you do that enough, you get a little lightheaded, a little dizzy, and it's a nice, pleasant feeling, not an unpleasant dizziness or not an unpleasant sensation, but it's rather pleasant to just sit there and massage back here. And so when they would make a mistake, I taught them to massage rather than hit. And it was very, very successful. I never had it researched, never had it studied, but I was reminded of it today in discussion with my good friend, Dr. Mark Varley, and it's in honor of him that I'm going to nickname this technique the Sarno Varley Technique. The Sarno Varley Technique, as he's trying to assist an 8-year-old in his practice and work. And I wanted to demonstrate the technique and get the word out there because I found it to be very effective with some severely disordered children who I still think about every day. I worked with them for years back in the 80s at a neuropsychiatric unit, and still regularly think of them and pray for them and just wish the best for them. They were clearly in distress. They were needing help. The state of Missouri had developed this program to help children falling through the cracks because juvenile programs didn't want to work with them, weren't equipped to, and regular hospitals weren't really equipped to work with them either. So there were several individuals who were put in a special program that I oversaw and trained staff. And we had some very good results with the Gemini program, as it was called at the time. A legislator in Missouri wanted to name it the Gemini program, so we did. And we had some really effective results at that time. And so I've used that technique with other children and their families throughout my practice over the last 30+ years. And again, I found it to be effective. I can't emphasize that enough. But just regular massage when not angry, and then massaging it when angry. That part of the brain, that seems to help with some chemical production that seems to reduce the urge to hit or the urge to stimulate that part of the brain for whatever reason that most people do. Other times you'll see people hit the front of their head. Again, the same type of effect. That's all rather connected. And of course, everyday folks massage this part of their head when they're stressed out. Well, if you look at these muscles as they wrap around the skull back to here, and certainly my friend Dr. Mark Varley could explain that better, but you're talking about the same regions of the brain and the same muscles that are being stimulated to bring about reduction of impulse to hit or aggress back here in the low brains. Our brains, again, how I conceptualize them and help others too, is picture 6 brains in your head. When we think, they're the 6 brains talking to each other. You have your low brains, mid brains, and upper brains. The low brains deal with all our body functions, including aggression, which is innate. We're born with aggression. All that kicking and elbowing in the womb is aggression. You know, let me out of here. And then when we come out, pop out, which only men say when we pop out, because we don't have to go through the experience. But then it's like, I want to go back, I want to go back, and we can't. So that low brain, those low brains, those work at 650 miles an hour, and they're all our body functions, including aggression, including sexuality. All those things, body functions, are in the low brains. And those develop about 21 days after conception in utero. So then we have our midbrains, which is our memory banks, which show up about 3 months after conception. And those midbrains record all our memories. All our memories are stored there. Now, we necessarily can't retrieve them, but they're all there, and they all do impact our behavior in one way or another. If we see a person, we have a bad feeling about them, it may be based on a memory that they remind us of someone that wasn't nice to us or something. And many times that's just happens so quickly, as we'll talk about with the speeds of the brains here shortly. And then our upper brains, where all our higher thinking occurs, and executive functions, impulse control, our upper brains. Now here's the dilemma. Those don't show up till after age 3. So reasoning with someone under age 3 doesn't work, because they don't have these brains there to develop that yet. And even these don't fully grow in or connect to the rest of the brains. And in some disorders like autism and ADHD, they don't really completely connect well with the rest of the brains as they grow in after age 3. That's why those diagnoses aren't made till after age 3 generally. And then we have the speeds of the brains that work differently. The low brains work at 650 miles an hour. The midbrains, the memory banks, work at 450 miles an hour. The upper brains are only 250 miles an hour. So when we think, they're the 6 brains talking to each other, left and right. Generally, not always, but left brain tends to be more logic and reason. Right brain tends to be expressive and expressive and feelings. Which is why many times with children who've been abused and neglected, I have them draw pictures so they could give memory recall and give expression to their right brains, because they can't recall with words what happened to them like they can with the left brains, which may have been impaired due to the trauma that occurred. So just a quick overview. Again, it's just one way to conceptualize it. There's no hard and fast science to prove it. And of course, the brains are very flexible, so that if there's brain damage in one part of the brains, the other brains can pick up the function of those parts of the brains. Not quite as well, never quite as well, but many times we see, my thing got messed up here, but many times we see that people can still make up for functions that are disabled in the brains for one reason or another. Excuse me. So the Sarno Varley Technique, as I've nicknamed it during this video, just massage back here, kind of where the skull curves down and meets the top of the neck, kind of massage back there regularly, as you can see I'm doing. and for several minutes, both when not upset and then when upset, trying that technique with children who have anger and aggression issues, and see if that doesn't help. All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Al out.